This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 396 for Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week is Steven ESC, and you can find him at Steven ESC on all the social media that matters, including Twitch, where he streams Minecraft and sometimes even art. Hello, sir.
Hey, Joel. How's it going? Good to be here.
It is Wednesday. That is all I'm going to say.
It's a Wednesday.
It is the middle of the week, and Friday yet ? Is all I have to say.
Nice.
I'm in that part, and I think a lot of people are probably dealing with this over the winter. We've had some very odd cold snaps here, and there's a lot of inside time this time of year for everyone. And I have been trying to get myself back into a routine after being a little bit lazy on things after Christmas. February was good, but I'm struggling to maintain it. And I don't know whether you want to call it the winter blues, whether you want to call it the COVID blues or whatever, but I feel like there's this cycle of normality that I'm seeming to be stuck in. And again, I don't have a lot of complaints because, generally speaking, things are going well. It's just that it's a lot of the same. Now, on the news side, which is a fun anecdote, I did mention this on the Render Distance, which is the extended version of the Spawn Chunks podcast I do with Pixel Riffs for our patrons. I have been playing a bit of Forza Horizon 4, but not on my own. My girlfriend Laura has been getting into it, which is really fun. Cool. It's really cute and exciting, and a really fun flashback to like when I was 10 and my buddy Scott Clark and I were playing with the Super Nintendo, doing like Street Fighter 2 and Mario Kart and all that kind of stuff. And the couch co-op or couch gaming experience. So you're not online with anybody. You're in the same room, and you're having a good time. And there was a couple of races as she was learning and getting new cars and trying to sort out, how the steering and all that kind of stuff works, where she was coming in, 12th, 10th out of 12 cars. And then there was a little, but I could sense the frustration coming in, and I did the same thing. I'm not saying at all that it was her driving. It was like, cause I felt the same way when I was first playing the game. They don't give you a lot of in-game instruction. They tell you as an introduction to the game, how to move around the world and where you might want to race. Like, do you want to do a dirt race? Do you want to do a road race? Do you want to do cross country? Whatever it is. And they explain all that to you, but they don't tell you about the stats on the cars. And they don't tell you about how the steering actually works. You'd have to probably have played the other Forza games to know. So eventually...
So is it just... Sorry, go ahead.
No, eventually I figured it out. And it basically, the game gives you these blue arrows on the road when you have either a route planned to get to the next race, because you have to drive around the map to do that. Or if you're taking a corner too fast, the arrows on the ground go from blue to yellow to red, as in if you try to take the corner at the speed, you're going to fly off the road. And I figured that out, that as you brake, they turn back to normal colors. So I was like, oh, and the light bulb went on. I have to make sure that I slow down before I get into the corner to turn these arrows back to a neutral color so I don't slide off the road. So it's like, okay, well, that makes it a lot more easier. And so when I explained that, because I didn't want a backseat game, I wanted her to try and, get there on her own, but I could sense that she was getting frustrated. So I gave her a couple of tips. Well, of course, next race, she comes in first after, a couple of struggles. and like
Holy smokes.
jumping off the couch and like the whooping and like it was just a really, really good time. It was fun to see that, and then proceed to do other races and like either finish first or not quite first, or like I can do better than that. I finished fourth, let's try to get first. Like, so that kind of stuff was really, really cool. The harder thing is driving around the world. If you don't set a route, then you don't get the arrows on the road. And so you have to like then be kind of like good enough at the game to gauge like, well, this is a pretty tight current turn. I should probably reduce my speed, because you have a speedometer on the screen, of course. I've changed it's not the difficulty setting, but it's just kind of like a GUI setting where instead of having the arrows on the road all the time, because I found that it's a beautiful game and I was looking at the arrows the whole time, I only have the arrows show up when I'm going around a corner. So on the road in general, there's no arrows, but there are like yellow or red arrows on corners where I may be coming in too fast. So it's just enough to kind of say like, oh, you should slow down, but it's not like this constant blue line that you're trying to drive on. And so I found that more enjoyable as I moved on. But it's been a lot of fun, and I've been unlocking cars, and she's been unlocking cars, and there's this thing that you can do where the game will pop up and say, hey, I hear there might be an abandoned classic car in this area. You should go find it. And they give you kind of like a big zone that you got to drive around through, which usually involves like off-road, going into like people's backyards and kind of like looking for these abandoned barns. And like out in the middle of a quarry, you'll see some half dome kind of like barrel of a barn. And sure enough, inside you might find like a 1961 Porsche or something. And I mean, it's in rough shape. You don't get it right away. They have to like restore it before you get to drive it around. And that's always fun. So it's like little treasure hunt things. It's very different from a racing game. It's very arcadey. Like you can, if you're doing a simulation mode, you can drive through stone walls, you can run over fences, and you get points for it. Like it's a good thing. I mean, you wreck your car, you wreck the paint job on your car until you switch out to a new one. But it's kind of one of those things where it's pretty much open world. Like if you want to just drive on the road and be neat and tidy and not deviate, then you can do that. Or if you feel like driving a Lamborghini across a field at 300 kilometers an hour, you can do that too, which is what I was doing this week. I'm in the winter season, and keeping some cars on the road during the winter season is a little bit challenging. So, and after you're in a farmer's field, it's like, well, when in Rome, let's see if there's any influence boards or anything around here in the non-race activities that I can do, where I can just drive around and like, run stuff over or see what's underneath this bridge and don't care that I've already dinged up the Lamborghini. It'll be good as new the next time I want to play. So it's been
embrace it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And it was fun letting go. Like it was fun kind of like, rather than racing and trying to stay on the road and doing all that kind of stuff, if you say like, I don't want to race against any other cars right now, I kind of just want to drive around and like maybe see different parts of the map or try to find these influence boards that are nearby. I do find that's a nice escape from the normal like tasks in video games. It's like, you should race and you should win. And then so like you just, well, I don't really feel like that kind of pressure right now, but it's like, well, driving around and hitting these influence boards, there's nothing to it. Like you just have to find them. So sure, let's go. It's like a scavenger hunt. So that's kind of fun. Nice. Do you play any racing games? Have you done any games like that? I mean, Mario Kart, like that kind of
It's
stuff?
funny. It's like we're, I don't remember if I've said it to you or mentioned to you before, but our family plays Mario Kart now every weekend. So once or twice a weekend, we will put in like, choose to do 8 or 12 courses, and we just go. So my sons and I have years of experience on playing Mario Kart. I told my sons when they were younger, I'm like, this is my favorite game of all time. It's like I can keep coming back to it and the next version of it, and I still just enjoy playing it. And it's usually because I'm always playing it with someone. So it's funny, you were going through the reasons why you loved playing this game with Laura, and I'm like, yep, this I can totally relate, because the four of us crammed together on a couch and just Mario Kart like crazy. And the frustrations that you were describing that Laura was having, my wife was having exactly the same ones early on, because my sons and I had years of experience playing. And then she came in and we would get first, second, third, and she would get 12th and then 10th, 11th, 9th or whatever. But my youngest son actually gave her some tips on how to take the skids properly, so you don't actually have to slow down and stuff. And as soon as that clicked for her, she just sort of slowly progressed. And now in the last, I think, 3 weekends, she's been doing quite a bit better. And this past weekend, we finished off after 12 races, first, second, third, and fourth place, all 4 of us, which was a pretty sweet little family moment. So
Right.
totally relate to enjoying the game, playing with people on the couch. And yeah, that's my favorite race game of all time.
I've noticed actually, now that you mentioned that Forza, now that I'm farther along where I've unlocked all the tutorial stuff and I just have the full game at my fingertips. When I go to do a race, I can do solo, co-op, head-to-head, or like against online people. Or I can just, and so solo, they put you up against a bunch of ghost cars. And what's really cool about it is that they grab people from your friends list that have played the game and they'll put their drivatars into the game with you. So
cool.
This is something that Ryan mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago. And so very often I'm racing against Ryan online. And even if I don't come in first, I still want to come in front of Ryan. Like I still want to be that. And there was one game early on, one race where I don't remember what I had. I think it was an Audi, and I was trying to do this sprint. So a sprint is a single race, start to finish. There's no loop. You don't do 3 laps like in Mario Kart. Like it's just a straight. You just keep on going. And I got to the tail end of it, and I was in second place, and I could see the first place. And sure enough, it was Ryan, and he was in. I think he was in a McLaren. So like I was staring at his tailpipe, just getting smaller and smaller. He hit the straightaway and just like, I was like, well, floor to the pedal is to the floor with this Audi, and I'm doing the best that I can, but I'm not catching him, which is pretty funny. Yeah. But it is cool because even though I knew he wasn't online, the fact that they do kind of like take the amalgamation of like his best laps or his best races and throw that in there as like a live drivatar flying around the world. It's really cool.
I thought you were saying that they actually take, they do that on Mario Nintendo as well. So if you had other people's Miis on there, like if I'm racing solo, they'll take family members' Miis and stick them in the audience and stuff like that. But it's not just his character's face you're racing against. It'll take like his best time and you're racing against that.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So his car is on the road when he was doing it solo, and you get to race against his time. Depending on what level he was at and all that kind of stuff. There's been several races where I've come in first and he's come in like 4th or 5th. But I think that what that probably is that he probably came in first, but he might have been racing at a lighter difficulty level. As I've been progressing, when I win several races in a row, the game says, you've run several races in a row. We're going to increase the difficulty. Okay. And you're just like, fine. And it's fair. It's cool because I like that it does that actually. Because it saves you the frustration going the other way, where like you've lost 4 races in a row. Do you want us to dumb the difficulty down a little bit so this is a little bit more fun for you?
Yes.
And you're like, yeah, like I'd like to, like, because it really sucks when you're coming in 12th, like when you don't even have a shot. Whereas if you're coming in 4th, you're like, okay, like I can do this. I just have to get better at it. It's much more encouraging. And because the game goes the other way, if you do come in first a couple times, then they're like, hey, you're doing really well. We're going to make this a little bit harder for you. And you're like, well, okay, fine. Like I have won a number of these things in a row. So like, I'm okay with that.
And then even if you get bumped down to 4th place in the next race or even 5th, and you're going, okay, then it's incentive to then get back up to first in that next.
Yes.
Yeah.
It keeps it being satisfying, right? Like you don't feel like you're phoning it in. Because there was a couple of races there on these sprints where you hit the straightaway, and I'm driving a Lamborghini, and I hit like 294 on the speed limit, and you're just like, the closest people behind you are like not even on the screen. If you're looking at your like your GPS and you're looking at the cars that might be behind you. Normally there's like a stack of cars, like a couple of cars links behind you, and you're working really hard to keep the lead, and there was just nothing there. So you're like, okay, yeah, fair. I guess I'll take the higher difficulty. So before we move on, what is your go-to character in Mario Kart?
I've got a Mii actually that I've become quite used to. So he's a heavy character. He's pointy eyebrows, gray hair, looks a little bit like me.
Okay, so I guess it's more about the kart then.
It is, yeah. I actually used the oh geez, this is awful. I forget what it's called, but it's basically the scooter that looks like the Vespa.
Okay, yeah, I've seen it. So
Yeah.
my sister and her family, they have a Switch and they play Mario Kart. Like that's one of their big games as well. And I've played with them, and I barely remember the characters outside of like Mario, Luigi, Toad, Princess, Koopa, Koopa Junior, and a couple of other folks. But I usually end up taking what looks like rocket ship carts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they look like spaceships with wheels. That's what I tend to
Nice.
grab. And then I have some fun with the parachutes and stuff. But Nick, my brother-in-law, was telling me like everything matters, like wheels,
Yep.
the fuselage of the car, the parachute slash glider thing, like just all that kind of stuff, really matters. And I'm finding the same. I find it overwhelming in some ways, but also with Forza, um, I'm not a car guy. and
No, me either.
and with Forza, like it's real world stuff, like it's tire pressure and like alignment and all this kind of stuff. And they have a description as like what it does. Like, like lower tire pressure is like higher grip, but like less control at higher speeds, or like all this kind of stuff. So you're trying to find this balance, but like I don't know what good tire pressure is. I know like less than what I have might help, but I don't know like what, like I feel like there's a certain knowledge that might give you some advantage going into the game.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. Do they give you those
But yeah,
explainers in Mario Kart, or do you have to look it up like elsewhere?
they've got basically. I think it's you hit the plus button on the controller, and then it shows you the stats for each one of these things. So, the vehicle will give you the acceleration, the handling,
Right. Okay.
and then traction. So there's a default set of, I guess when you choose the vehicle, it automatically has the default wheels and the default glider, and so you choose which vehicle you want, and then you pick the wheels, and then your stats change again when you choose the wheels, and then the stats change again when you choose your glider. So for me, it's I chose it's actually just looked it up. It's called the City Tripper. So I chose the City Tripper because it's a scooter, and I love Vespas, love them. So that's the main reason why I chose it originally. And then I just basically found I guess sort of the tires that looked most Vespa like, that had the best stats. And then I chose the clouds because I thought it was funny to have a scooter with clouds. And that's basically it. And so I've just become very good at that. Whenever I used to play online, my go-to vehicle was the Caterpillar with spongy tires and the Flower, because I thought it was hilarious to beat people with that type of a vehicle. And I would I don't know why, because I played it a little while ago and I was awful at it, but for some reason during that period of my life, I was awesome at the Caterpillar with squishy tires and a Flower, and I would just come in first or second very frequently. So it made me happy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I've not done any online stuff yet because, again, not being a car guy, not being normally a racing guy, I'm very surprised I'm getting so much out of this game. I think a lot of it has to do with just it's very pretty. It's all 4K optimized for the Xbox Series X, so it really does look good. But for me, like I'm gravitating towards. I got a new Mini, so I like the Mini for like tight city races with tight corners and stuff. It's pretty good.
Like your car in game is actually like a one of the new little Austin, not an Austin Mini, but I guess
Mini is the name of the car and the manufacturer. Yeah,
nice.
Because I think you're right. I think it is owned by Mercedes. And then I have a Lamborghini. I think it's a Hurricane. And there's another one. The other one is the black one is faster. I don't remember what it's called. Really cool looking car. Because it's jet black, but has like it looks like gunmetal like ribs on it.
Oh, nice.
In the paint job, and then the underbelly is yellow, so like it looks like a dinky from the '80s, and it's just like it just looks.
It's
fast.
yellow.
Yeah,
Wow.
the underbelly is yellow. Like it's really cool. It looks like a bumblebee. Like it's really cool looking. But the yellow Lamborghini Hurricane that I have, that's the one I prefer for like fast races, anything with a lot of straightaways. It has a nice kind of like torque to brake ratio. Like you can slow down and take a really hard corner, and then you're back up to 130 in like no time.
Oh man.
Yeah, so like in the mini, and then what was the other thing that I was really enjoying? Oh, I still really like the Lancia. I'm struggling to remember the model. No, sorry, the Lancia is the model. Struggling to remember the car manufacturer, but it has like a really good acceleration, and it's good for off-road stuff like dirt racing. And so, like if you're off the road, if you kind of like spin out at a turn or whatever, you can get back in there like super fast. Like you don't if you screw up and hit a tree, you're not out of it. You can get back in there like super quick. And so I find that it's very forgiving for people that are a little hard on the on the turn sometimes.
Or a little new to the game, perhaps.
Yeah, and the whole winter thing is kind of nice because the seasons change in the game, and so do the road conditions, obviously. And so I've been having fun with like a little Subaru that for whatever reason it just kind of jives with the way that I can drift around corners, which is similar to like the skidding in Mario Kart. You know, like you want to skid to the point where like you don't spin out, but you want to come close to that so that you can maintain your speed around corners. And I've been getting used to that. It's been a lot of fun. I feel like this week something has just kind of clicked with that kind of gameplay. So I'm hoping that it'll
Nice.
get a little bit better. Yeah. But it's just an enjoyable game, and I've logged in at lunchtime and just like put my feet up on the coffee table and just been like, I'm just gonna drive around. I'll just
Nice.
set a go-to marker on the other side of the map and just like I'm gonna go over there. I've never seen that before, so let's go see what it looks like. And it's really relaxing. I find it very very chill.
I've actually, it's not in the driving sense, but you talking about just sort of just kicking up your feet and driving around. I've actually done that, just flown around in Minecraft on my 15-minute breaks for work sometimes, where I feel like, deadline, deadline, deadline. You know what? I'm just gonna fly for like 10 minutes. And so I just have my elytra on and just make sure I've got enough rockets, and I just glide around. It's nice to kick back and adventure to different areas of the map I haven't been in yet. But it's no, I really enjoy that. Just no project on the go, not streaming anything, not building anything, just flying.
So are you just like flying for thousands of blocks in a single direction, or are you just exploring builds, flying over what people are doing?
Little of both. I mean, I guess admittedly, one of the times I was flying, I was looking for a spot to build a new project. The sort of that stair monument or stair temple I'm working on. But yeah, I've not really adventured east at all. So I went to the northeast, just checked out a bunch of the mountains over there, and then I flew below Somerville, just went straight south for a while, and it was just all kinds of ocean. So I didn't actually, other than a few islands, I actually didn't see any land for the longest time. And then the night started to fall, so I'm like, yeah, I forgot a bed. I'm just gonna turn back around. So, but it was sweet. It was just, again, no agenda, just swooping around and flying. It's pretty great.
It's funny, like if you fly far enough south, it's not as nearly as far as the medieval area on the server, but there's actually the modern city is south of Somerville. It's pretty much due south actually. But I think it's like 4,000 blocks maybe. I mean, obviously it's easier to get there with the portal or the nether, but yeah, it's fun to do that. Like I remember when I was I was doing it in a creative world, a download, but for those of you that aren't aware, with the Citadel Minecraft server, there's a number of different areas that have certain themes, and so I downloaded the seed and was flying around in the seed in a creative test world on my computer, looking for ideal spots for things like the modern city, where it was very very flat next to a harbor, or the medieval area that had like really cool like mountains on one side and ice spikes and like desert over there, and like really kind of diverse, really some cool mountainous like places for like evil castles and stuff like that. And it's really cool when you're just kind of like flying over Minecraft terrain, just kind of like letting it load in without really caring much. Like you're just kind of looking, you're not really you're not, thinking it. For me at the time, I wasn't even thinking about rockets or nighttime. I was just like, I'm just flying around looking for areas. And it was a really enlightening experience in terms of like, the different terrain generation and stuff. All that's changing like crazy now. We're, there's no snapshot this week, but next, so not this week, but maybe the following week coming, I feel like there's something big coming. Usually when they skip a week in the snapshot, it means that they're working really hard. And so on the Spawn Chunks later this month, I would imagine there's going to be a lot to talk about, because with Caves and Cliffs, that update, they're updating not only the caves below ground, but also they're increasing the world height and new mountains. So you're going to have to be careful not to fly into things and go splat in the near future, which would be pretty funny. Moving on to listener email, we have a message from Jackson D about WandaVision. Hello, Joel and co-host. I'm here yet again with another email. I was wondering if Joel's WandaVision thoughts have changed as the story has changed so much. Personally, I thought that the show was a little slow at the beginning, but a couple of episodes later, it picked up the pace. Could say more, but I don't know if your co-host has watched, and I wouldn't want to spoil anything. Love to hear your opinions on the show. Jackson. Well, Jackson, we're going to talk about WandaVision in the main discussion this week, so you're in luck. I will, of course, toss out a spoiler warning and let people know that we'll be talking about at least episodes 6, 7, and 8. 8 being the most recent that aired last Friday, about 5 days ago. I am all caught up. Steven is all caught up. But if you are not all caught up, then you should go do that before you listen to this, because I would hate to ruin something for you. Because as Jackson suggested, the show is getting thicker in a good way, and I'm really happy about it. I do find that it's a hard sell. I've been telling people how much I'm enjoying it, but that's usually followed by, you really have to get through the first 3 and just like even put them on in the background, because it's hard to get through them. I did not enjoy them very much at all, but an exact opposite feeling for 6, 7, and 8. I'd say maybe less so 8, but certainly the last few have really opened up my eyes to what's going on, and I'm really enjoying the show. Where are you with WandaVision? How are you feeling on it so far?
I've actually enjoyed it right from the beginning. Just sort of went into it not really knowing what to expect. I guess other than what was shown in the trailer, and the trailer very much showed, the old classic television shows. So when it was definitely, the first couple of episodes were slower in terms of the big picture story, but I personally enjoyed them for what they were. Like, they did an excellent job of paying respect and homage to the old shows that they were mimicking. So, and I thought that was pretty cool. I feel like they could have, even though I enjoyed them in terms of keeping the pace going, I feel like they could have probably squished 1 and 2 together. So I felt 3 was moving things, like that's when things started to break, the reality started to break down a little bit in 3. So if 1 and 2 were combined together, so that you got a sense of like, oh, this is weird, and there's a little bit of a nugget at the end of 2. So if 1 and 2 were together and slow, but there's a nugget at the end, you'd go, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then at that point, 3 would have become 2, and then the reality would have broken down a little bit like it does. And I think that probably would have been better for the pacing. But I'm honestly, I've been enjoying it all the way through. And as soon as 4 happened, like, did we interrupt this program when they introduced Monica Rambeau's backstory? I thought, okay, this is just, it didn't just progress. It was like this, it felt like this massive leap in, I don't want to say story quality, but you know what I mean, though. It got a lot.
Oh, it got wider.
Meatier story.
Yeah, it got wider. You took the cast of 3 and turned it into a cast of 7 or 8, right?
Yeah,
in terms
and brought back old favorites like Jimmy Woo and what's her name? Darcy.
I don't remember her last name, but
Lewis,
Darcy. Yeah, Darcy Lewis. You're right. Yeah. And she's, Kat Dennings. You've got Randall Park. I've mentioned before that Tiona Paris, who plays Monica Rambeau, is very, very good. Like, they're just they have a character. Like, they're not necessarily character actors, but they have a very defined role, and they do it very well. They really kind of give you that personality without it feeling cheesy. Mm-hmm. So it's fun. It's comic booky, but in a good way, not in a way that I'm complaining about whatsoever. Monica Rambeau being a little bit more the straight and narrow in that realm. Although there's some depth there. Like, there was a moment, and I don't remember what episode it was so forgive me, but there was a moment where they mentioned Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, and you would expect Rambeau to have more of a warm reception to that mention, and she did not. It was visibly the opposite. You're like, ooh.
Definitely bad blood there.
Yeah, somebody is upset about something. And that would have all been happening before the snap, right? So whatever bad blood or whatever issues are there are things that we don't know about because we have this giant hole in the Captain Marvel story between the origin Captain Marvel in the film, which was set in the 90s, to, 2019's Endgame, right? You know that during 5 years of the snap, she was helping out the Avengers, but she wasn't helping them out on the planet. She was helping them out in other places in the universe. So she was not around at all. But before that, we've got no idea what was going on. And so, yeah, I'm curious to see if we get that story not in this series, but perhaps in the next Captain Marvel film.
I guess jumping ahead to episode 8, I was hoping that there would be, or I guess through the last few episodes, I was hoping there was going to be more about Monica Rambeau and how her character evolved, because I mean, this is jumping, me jumping from episode 4 to 7 and 8. Once she develops powers, they've barely touched on them, and then she wasn't even in the last episode at all. So it's just like, okay, now there's one episode left in the show. I don't even think they're doing multiple seasons, so there's one episode left in the show, and so I don't even know if we're going to get like a satisfying story arc for her in this. It just feels like she's been touched on. But like I said, I cheated and I checked, and she is in fact in Captain Marvel 2, coming out next year. So it's in post-production right now. So we'll get to see. I expect we'll get to see how the pre-story and the bad blood thing went down through a series of flashbacks. That's just a guess. I don't know for sure, but
give me 1 second. There's a siren going by. I know that it can be heard tonight. If I don't talk, we can just edit it out. What's really funny is that I heard it coming from you first.
You heard it coming from me first?
Yeah, because of course it went by your place and then it's going by my place now.
Oh, probably while I was talking.
It's fine. It was very, very, very subtle. But I know with my mic, for whatever reason, they come in like they're on my shoulder. It's really ridiculous. Anyway, I'm good at markdown. I can take it out.
I guess that's probably one advantage that my Snowball has over yours, is it's basically unidirectional and it's just facing me. So even though you heard the siren, it I don't know. Maybe it cuts it out more. I don't know.
Mine, it's a frequency thing. So like low stuff like a fan, fine.
Oh.
But high pitched thing, Blue Jay, siren, it's like crystal clear. It all depends. Okay, cool.
Is there anything that you wanted me to say over, or was it fine?
No, it's all good. I'll just pick up with Monica Rambeau. I did really enjoy the way that they explained, or how, I guess I should say, Darcy explained Monica's powers. We don't really know what they are. We know that she's been changed by going through the border of the hex, whatever you want to call it, that Wanda has put up around Westview. And she said that her DNA has been rewritten twice. And then so the third time when she goes in, she ends up being very changed to the point where the way that she sees is different. And when Wanda gets mad and uses her powers on her and throws her across the street or across the county, I can't remember which, and she gets out of that unscathed because she either absorbed it or she landed softly somehow, or she doesn't even know. Like I don't think she's necessarily aware that she's got powers now. I think she's just like, there's so much weird stuff going on. She's probably just attributing it to Wanda. And to your point, we don't get to find out what Monica thinks about that. Like that's the last time that we saw her. But I did some digging myself because I was curious, and she is Spectrum in the Marvel universe. And
interesting.
So she is actually she does actually have like powers and stuff, and basically she can see in a different spectrum of light compared to other humans and other superheroes, which again, hence the name. She can also absorb energy. So when Wanda was throwing energy at her, she basically sucked it up, and then that's why she didn't get hurt when she landed, because she was able to use it to like absorb the impact. Nice. Reminded me about how they explained the Black Panther armor, like how he kind of like builds up kinetic energy and then he can release it and use it to like, punch people really hard or hit the ground and send a bunch of people flying, that kind of stuff.
Which is strangely similar to Captain Marvel's ability as well. She, like, if laser blasts are coming at her, she can just
Yeah.
absorb and redirect. So
Yeah. It's interesting how they have a lot of this kind of like yin yang thing going on with the powers, and especially with Wanda. They did a lot, and I really enjoyed the backstory. You think you know it because you've been told it, but you've been told it by other people, but not necessarily from the perspective of Wanda herself.
right.
So in that last episode, to skip around, episode 8, we've got this the Agatha Harkness, who is revealed to be the big villain this season, takes Wanda back through the ages of all the different things that have shaped her experience emotionally, and she's trying to figure out how Wanda has done this crazy, incredible feat of, controlling and manipulating all of Westview just on her own without even really thinking about it. Like, it feels effortless.
Right, because she's a witch as well. And they give a bit of her backstory to show that she was a witch and powerful enough to absorb other witches' powers. So here she is now a powerful witch, but trying to figure out how Wanda was able to do this next level stuff that she couldn't figure it out. She's like, okay, so this would be just a simple charm like this. And she was equating everything that Wanda did to her abilities. And so, yes, as you were saying, that part of like the trip down memory lane was all about trying to figure out, what did she do? What did Wanda do that was different from what Agatha had done to figure out how she could become next level or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And it really gives you an insight into how and why Wanda is doing the whole hex illusion thing. And I mean, like, I had thought for a while that it was just Wanda. I didn't think it was anything really necessarily. I didn't even think it was necessarily conscious. I thought she was basically either going through PTSD or some sort of super grief. And it turns out that it was mostly grief over losing vision. But when they go back and they show you all the things that Wanda has endured, she really just she does the thankless work. Like, she is probably one of the most, if not the most powerful Avenger that we're aware of in terms of what she's capable of doing. And yet, through media twisting, through Civil War, through a bunch of other different situations, she's just always forced to take the brunt of the bad things that are and all the concerns that people have about these kind of things. Like, and I would imagine a lot of it is just from fear. Like, I would imagine that outside of Vision, there'd be a certain amount of fear from the Avengers being like, glad she's on our side, because if she was ever not on our side, we'd be screwed,
Yep.
And I do get that. I mean, especially like, there's a spot, we might have mentioned this the last time you were on, but there's a spot in Endgame where she faces off against Thanos, and until she gets knocked over by something else, like, she's owning face. Like, he was up in the air, and I think he's screaming rain fire or something. Like, he actually calls the big guns on the ships to get out of that. He's not getting out of it on his own.
Yeah, he's levitated up in the air, and I don't know, she's like, all of his armor starts popping up off and stuff. So he basically, if he didn't have that extra level of backup, he probably would have been done.
Yeah, which again speaks to how powerful Wanda is. Mm-hmm. And Agatha Harkness gets into that. Now, she's not my favorite anymore. I enjoyed kind of like the overacting and stuff when she was the neighbor, Agnes, I guess.
So typical sitcom neighbor.
Agreed. And it worked for those situations. But I don't think that it works for Agatha Harkness. She gets better in the last 15 minutes, but the initial "come along, darling, don't you see what's going on?" Like, it's just like, oh my God, could you just speak like a normal human? It's fine. Because the thing is, like, when Wanda responds, it's good acting, and she's scared for her kids, and she's confused, and she's just trying to figure out what's going on. And you feel pretty normal. Like you feel like MCU film sort of realm, not kitschy television spoof, you know? And so, but Agatha is still in spoof town. So I wasn't a fan of that at first. I liked the idea of it and the magic and the stuff that she was doing in the basement with like the bug and the bunny, and like there's some cool creepy stuff going on that has layers that I don't really know much about, because I don't know much about Agatha Harkness other than she's a dark magic witch. But she does bring up, and is the only time and the first time that we've ever heard Wanda called the Scarlet Witch in the MCU, and that she discerns that Wanda had latent or dormant magic abilities, but then she came in contact with the Mind Stone, which is where she got her current level of power. And those two things combined have given Wanda what Agatha called chaos magic, which again, right. I don't know anything about. I feel like it's been mentioned before, but I don't know by whom. It could have been Thanos. It could have been, I feel like it might have been, I can't remember her name. She's the monk that trains Doctor Strange. I feel like in some speech, she might have talked about chaos magic or something.
The old one or the ancient?
The ancient one? I think you're right. I think it's the ancient one. Anyway, I feel like it's maybe that movie I need to rewatch and kind of listen for, because that's the only other Marvel film that to my knowledge that involves magic.
Right. And on that note, I had completely forgot, but mini side note, recently fallen into the black hole that is known as TikTok, so I won't get into that, but one of the
You're
videos
welcome,
showed,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And so but one of the clips that I happened to swipe past, it showed this young gentleman sitting there and you know how they often put the captions over top of the video, so people aren't actually talking, it's just caption. And they said, just recently started watching all of the Marvel movies in chronological order. When I saw, when I got to Doctor Strange, and he freeze framed. I don't even know what the proper grammar for that is. Froze frame or freezed frame. Someone let us know. But basically, the still was in the library when Doctor Strange says, "What's that?" And it's a bunch of magic books hanging on a rack that is all hexagon shaped. And there is one of them missing. And all of the bindings on the book and the details on it looked like the magic book that was in the basement. In last not episode 8, but episode 7. when Wanda actually went down in the basement to follow Agatha, there was a book shown there, and it looked like it was the missing book from the hexagon shelf in Doctor Strange. And I was like, is this just like a Photoshop thing? So I went back and I checked, and sure enough. And so, and then it makes sense why she's going to appear in the next, like maybe that's the tie-in why Wanda appears in the next Doctor Strange movie. Like there's going to be this overlap. Maybe it has to do with that book.
Well, I think too that because, as you mentioned, we're so late into the season. Like I think there's only 1 or 2 more episodes.
1, I think.
Is there only 1? I don't know how many episodes are planned. But yeah, it's that thing where you don't know how they're going to tie it up. So it may not be that this is supposed to be a complete story, but instead a prologue to something else coming next. And because it deals so heavily with magic now, it's been revealed that Wanda's powers being tied to magic, and to our knowledge, I always thought it was the Infinity Stone, for the Mind Stone.
Me too.
But it's both. And so now that she's got magic, the next logical step is obviously going to be Doctor Strange, which I believe is the something of madness, Multiverse of Madness, I believe is the name of the film. So I'm curious to see where it goes. I've never been a big fan of magic in my superhero stories, but that is also because when I've experienced that, it's been in DC, And I don't know if they necessarily handle it the best, so with the stones and the cosmic way that some of the stuff works, it's still fairly heavily rooted in sci-fi as far as I'm concerned, with the exception of Doctor Strange. But even then, I sort of give him a pass because of how well it's done.
Yeah, I guess for me, the reason why I can see what you mean, but I think one of the reasons why there's been, for me at least anyway, like zero friction with the idea of magic in the MCU is it's somebody's not stopping, doing an incantation, saying a spell, and then there's an outcome. Because that means then there's really only, if you only know a certain number of spells, you sort of reach a limit in terms of what you can do. So these characters that have magic abilities are just on the fly conjuring. So it seems less like spells and just straight up superpowers. You know what I mean? So it's. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love vampires, werewolves, and witch stories as well, and I love the incantations and the spells and things. But it feels like in this superhero world, I think you raise a good point that if it were that kind of magic, as opposed to, like, if Agatha's magic was the standard where they always had to say the spells, it just feels like it might be just slowing down the pace. But
yeah, I agree. Well, because it takes Wanda's powers and turns it into more like the Force from Star Wars, as opposed to when they started the episode 8 previously on, which is the title of the show, which is a great episode name. It started in Salem in 1693. I rolled my eyes, going, "Oh God, really? More Salem stuff? Come on!" Like, we haven't seen this 1,000 times in media. But I mean, they have to stay true to the comics, and that's how the comics would have been written originally in terms of the characters. So I mean, fine. But I was just like, "Oh God!" Like, I could feel the back of my, the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I was like, the show is so good. What are you doing? And so, like, I have that kind of apprehension to it. However, the thing that I find the most interesting are some of the fan theories that are flying around, because you've got Wanda Maximoff that has been affected by the Mind Stone and given latent abilities because she was or had these abilities in magic, but then the Mind Stone augmented them and changed them. We've got people like Monica Rambeau that have been in and out of this hex thing, and her DNA has been rewritten according to Darcy, and now has powers, and as far as we know, is on the way to becoming Spectrum. What I thought was really interesting was some of the theories that I saw, especially when they included and I forget his name, but the original guy that was cast as Quicksilver in the X-Men movies comes back. They reveal that it was Agatha playing a trick on Wanda, but he comes back as Wanda's brother. Completely different actor in the MCU, but this is from the Fox X-Men film series. And they kind of like, they hint at this X-Men sort of tie-in thing. And the idea is that the X-Men don't exist separately from the Avengers in the MCU. It's that they don't exist yet. And
interesting.
So you think about, what if the X gene is dormant in people and you need some sort of powerful force like chaos magic going over, I don't know, the entire planet. Right now it's just Westview. But if that goes over the entire planet, then you potentially get Wanda Maximoff as the mother of all X-Men.
That's very cool.
I mean, I'm not the nerd that came up with it. I can't even point you to who it was. It was probably TikTok, to be honest. But it's one of those things like, wow, that's awesome. And it would explain in the world-ending events of Endgame where the X-Men were, as in they just weren't here yet. They're the next phase. And if Marvel is going down that road, I will once again tip my hat to just future planning. Like, Disney has finally bought Fox. They have access to all these properties. It'll be a little bit of time yet, but all those X-Men movies will be ripe for recasting and redoing. As much as I like the new ones, I really liked Days of Future Past, I think it was. there's been a couple of really good ones with the new cast, especially when they brought I think Days of Future Past was the one where you had the original X-Men cast brought in with the new, and I really really like them.
Nice.
So yeah, like it's going down this road that could be very very cool. The other thing that I've seen as a theory is, and I'm struggling to remember his name right now. He's the main antagonist, the sword agent, the leader guy. Tyler Hayward. Yeah, I had in my notes. I have him as Pricky McPrickface. Just
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't like him.
Well,
but yeah,
it's an appropriate name. So
so the other thing, and this is the stuff that I'm not picking up on, and I wish I was steeped enough in Marvel Comics and more of the universe to pick up on this stuff. But someone mentioned that he is from another universe, or they think he's from another universe, and in that universe, he's anti-mutant, right? And so he's coming to this universe to try and stop Wanda from creating the X-Men in the first place. Right.
Interesting.
And because the whole idea is that Darcy gets access to Hayward's secret files that reveals that he knows that Monica's DNA has been altered, meaning she's a mutant. And so that's why his tone shifts so harshly against Monica about halfway through the series, or out of the episodes with Wanda and with Monica and Hayward.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple episodes where they're buddy, and then they split ways real fast. He starts to be an absolute. Well, you start to realize he's the bad guy, right? And you're just like, why is that? But this again, it's just a theory. There's no proof to it because we don't get the behind the scenes. But it just sort of has this. He's now thinking of her as has powers is threat as opposed to a member of Sword, right? And so I feel like these are like not necessarily I'm agreeing with either one of them. I just think that they're probably close. I don't know what Marvel has planned, but I feel like these are not without merit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. No, I like those two theories. The only one that I heard is that, the one that essentially the X-Men exist concurrently but in a different
different
sort
universe.
of parallel universe. And then so this will be a bridging of the two worlds will happen, and that will allow them to have existed already. And so, backstory of the previous movies sort of stand, and Disney will change it to suit whatever they need. But I'm really liking that one where they have not existed yet.
I think I like that one the best too. As much as I know that the multiverse is coming and what that opens up for storylines, and I know a lot of people are excited about it. Most of what I have to deal with that is like the Infinite Earth crisis with DC, which was a pain in the butt. Like I don't, because then you've got like multiple Flashes, and then you've got multiple Batmans, and sometimes they're good Batmans, and sometimes they're bad Batmans, and I find that tiring. I would much rather have a more inventive, cleaner timeline for X-Men. And I love the idea of the combination of people, like in the X-Men universe, you have that divide of, it's essentially racism. Like they just, people, they don't like mutants. They get very, not, I guess, defensive. They act in fear, basically, is how it goes. And so you have that divide for mutants just wanting to be accepted for what they are, and then regular people having this divide of like they either support them or they don't. And yet the mutants continue to either save the world or try to destroy it, depending on which side of the mutant population that you're on, for good comic book reasons. But in addition to that, if you had the underlying history of the 5-year snap, the fact that superheroes with abilities have already saved the universe once, like it adds a layer of complication that doesn't mean it's the same old X-Men story. Like it creates something new, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to it. And especially if we get like superhero series in the way that we're getting WandaVision. Like WandaVision sure started off slow, but there's been a lot of powers and a lot of cool stuff happening in the last, 3 episodes. A lot of cool effects, like when Vision leaves the Hex and he starts to like fall apart piece by piece, and all the different things. The flashbacks that they showed of Wanda going to Sword and, taking Vision's body and like all that kind of stuff was super, super well done. Like it felt like a film. It did not feel like a TV show. And if we get X-Men series that have that kind of production quality, man, I'm on board.
That's one thing that it actually surprised me when this whole time they'd been saying that Wanda went to Sword and stole Vision's body, and that's why he was in the Hex world. But she didn't actually, and then we found out in the most recent episode that she didn't actually take the body. She went in there to basically, some sort of to take his body to bury it, but Hayward didn't let her take the body. And so the Vision that we've known all this time in the series, I thought was actually a rebuilt Vision, but it was just completely created by Wanda. So he basically Hayward lied that she stole the body and he had it this whole time, and then I forgot, like, you've got a note there about White Vision, because it was sort of like the very, very last scene of last episode. And yeah, I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with that.
And this is where I've got no knowledge. Like, I'm sure some of our listeners are probably screaming at their podcaster right now, because I'm just like, I just don't know. My thought, because they hinted at this a little bit, is that Ultron might, because Vision was originally built by Ultron to be like the new body. Like it was supposed to be like the new upgrade compared to the big honking villain that they fight in Age of Ultron was like phase 2 of his on his way to his third body. That's the whole thing they're trying to do, is stop him in the second act. They stop him from getting into Vision's body. Or I guess at that point it wasn't Vision. So I kind of wonder whether, I think there was another theory about Hayward trying to reactivate Vision, but instead of not Vision, I think he was trying to reactivate Ultron. But it kind of all goes to speculation. And I don't know enough about the white version of Vision to know where it was supposed to go. I don't know whether that leads towards Silver Surfer or if that's something else entirely. Like, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that I need to kind of like dive into some Wikipedia articles. Maybe it's hard because like you don't want to spoil anything, but at the same time you're just like, I have so many questions.
I know.
So many questions.
I've been actually tempted to spend some of my allowance on that $9.99 Marvel subscription and just throw away all my spare time and just start at the beginning and read all the way through.
Yeah, I'm happy that I don't know like a good chunk of this stuff. It means that I'm less critical. It's like reading the book before the movie. Like I'd much rather go in and just kind of see where they're going with it. But I mean, I'm happy to say, Jackson, that I have turned my heel and changed my thoughts on WandaVision. I do wish that these streaming shows would get off to a slightly stronger start. Like I kind of want to be hooked. I like that feeling of being hooked after episode 1, and I don't always get it these days. And so I'm hoping that more stuff in the future might be a little bit faster paced. Maybe we'll get that from Falcon and the Winter Soldier when that comes out. Like that looks to be a pretty fast paced show. I can't imagine them going off at a snail's pace on a spy show. Like that seems like it would be a mistake.
Yeah, it's only 6 episodes as well, isn't it? So they almost need to get off to a quicker start.
Right.
Complete that arc.
I mean, that's good. I mean, you have to be neat and tidy with 6 episodes. I much prefer that approach. Moving on into the Internet Minute, which of course is brought to you by you. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you're getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining in at any level will give you an invite to the member-only Discord server. There are multiple levels and different rewards to choose from. Just check it all out at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Currently sitting steady at 21 patrons from February into March. If you would like to be 22, then check it out. And if you have any questions, let me know at Joel Duggan on Twitter. And you can also just email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com and just ask anything you want. Happy to be transparent about the whole 9 yards. My pick this week is an update coming to one of my favorite video games in the last few years. Satisfactory Update 4 is coming to the experimental branch of the game on March 16th. So say the developers at Coffee Stain Studios. I believe them. They've done a number of Q&A streams and things over the last couple of weeks where they say, like, we've been looking for these dates. We're thinking maybe March 9th, maybe March 16th. And now they say March 16th looks like it's a go. The experimental branch, for people who are not familiar, there's two versions of the game. There's early access, and then there's experimental. Experimental is basically like a giant red warning sign. By the way, this is maybe has some features that are unstable, things that maybe not be working. But the people that play experimental then provide key feedback to Coffee Stain in order to improve and stabilize the game. So proceed at your own risk on March 16th. But pending the number of bugs that have to be squashed, the game should be coming to the early access version by about April, mid-April, give or take. So I'm really looking forward to that because there's a number of changes that are coming. And because of where I am in my playthrough of Satisfactory, I stopped playing a long time ago because Update 4 was announced. And we knew that it was going to include things like Mark II pipes, which carry more liquids at faster speeds. Gases are coming now, and that also involves new things in pipes like hydrogen. Gas power is going to be the thing. There are power changes in terms of power buildings will now provide not just enough power to the base as what's needed. They will always have a full crank output of as much power as they can make. And they're introducing power storage into the game. So you can overpower your base and store excess power in the form of batteries. At least that's what people are calling them. We don't know what the buildings are called just yet. And then if anything happens where a power plant goes down or you do something that is a boo-boo and you've pulled too much power from your grid, then you'll get a warning saying, hey, you're still up and running, but you're running on reserve power. You should probably fix that. So that's really cool because nothing is worse than having your game come to a grinding halt when you've got not enough power plants to handle the new things. They're adding tier 8 to the technology tree. Late game recipes are changing, including aluminum production, and I am looking forward to that because this is where I stopped. I got into this. It was incredibly complicated, and I didn't find it fun at all. And I thought, my gosh, I'm going to need football fields of space to create any amount of this that I need. And they're revamping it. They're making it a little bit more concise. And in addition to that, liquid nodes, which is something you need to produce aluminum, is changing in the game as well. Right now, if you want to get things like water and oil, you have to go out into the ocean kind of areas in the map. And you'll find oil slicks and you have to build a refinery on them or an extractor. And water, you can just build a water pump anywhere. Lake, beach, doesn't matter. You just build it and it floats in the water and it pumps up the water. Now they're adding nodes. So think like geysers or land situations where you can get crude oil from the ground as opposed to having to find an ocean, because there are some landlocked areas of the map that put you miles from oil, which really sucks when you hit that kind of like early mid-game stride. So I'm looking forward to it. I am going to have to be patient because I don't think I'm going to be loading up my current factory build into the experimental. I might do it personally just to play around, but I think I'm going to do some streaming in April with the Satisfactory Update 4 and hopefully the early access when it comes around. Have you seen Satisfactory at all, Stephen? I feel like it would be a game that you would really enjoy.
I've only seen you play it, so I haven't actually experienced the gameplay or anything like that for myself. But it's it definitely looks interesting. My sons have watched your streams when you play it, and they think it would be a very cool thing to try. So it's Windows only though, isn't it?
It is Windows only. Yeah, no, as soon as I said that, I realized it was Windows only. It's one of those things where it's just super satisfying. I know it's a horrible pun to kind of like use the name of the game kind of like in the description of it, but it's really rewarding when you grasp the concepts, build the factory, have everything streamlined, and turn it on, and it all kind of like works like a top. You're just like, yes, like I have learned the new skill, I have proved the new skill, and now I have to learn the next thing because I have more, iron ingots that I know what to do with, and that's where I'm at. I have a large base that I'm building in the kind of visage of Devastator from the Decepticons, and it's massive.
Oh yeah.
And it means that I have the room to expand so I can bring in all kinds of this stuff. And I remember the last thing I was working on was a big copper area. And it was neat. I'm trying not to rebuild things. So I've built a number of smelters to turn copper into copper ingots. But then halfway through the construction, I ended up discovering a secret recipe that allows you to create pure copper ingots by putting the copper through refineries instead of smelters. And so rather than redoing all of my smelter belts, I just decided, you know what, we're just going to leave it as is. We'll call it like this is where the game went up a level, and we'll just do refineries from now on. But for the first part, we're going to stay with the smelters. And it gives that kind of like, it's like that yes and game that you play in creative endeavors where like you have to accept what just was said and you have to build on top of it. And I find it creates that cool, not helter-skelter, but it creates that cool layered look to your factory. Like it's neat and tidy, but you can see where the thought processes change. And I've noticed that with other people that I watch play Satisfactory. I Am Kibitz is someone that I quite enjoy. He's also a silly dude, and Canadian actually. And his stuff is just wild. And he's played the game a lot, and he kind of knows what's coming, so he can plan ahead. But it's really fun to kind of see the happy accidents happen, and the you have to accept it and move on because I really don't want to build this again sort of feel, which is I'm sure we're all used to that in Minecraft. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can find more information about the show and links to some of the things that Stephen and I talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod. You can email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or find the show by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify, as well as YouTube. And you know what? Share the podcast with a friend. Just poke a friend in the arm, safe distance, and say, hey, you should listen to the Citadel Cafe, and then let them know where they can listen to it. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I'm doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio at joelduggan.com. You can listen to my other podcast all about Minecraft at thespawnchunks.com. And of course, follow me on social media at Joel Duggan and Twitch, Joel Duggan. Same as always. I'll see you there. Stephen, where can people find you online?
Basically the same, except replace Joel Duggan with Stephen ESE, and that's where you'll find me. And more often than not, hanging out on Twitch, the twitch.tv/Stephen ESE.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.